Hi everybody, my name's TSW, and in this video I'm going to be covering Tempest Keep, kind of like a raid leader's raid guide to this tier 5 dungeon. So if you enjoy this content, please leave a comment and a like. This is going to be heavily unedited, so this is just a off-the-cuff kind of guide, but if this does get good positive feedback, then I will spend the time and do a more in-depth guide with a lot more editing and like a script and make it as good as I can. But for the time being, I just want to get something out there that is somewhat usable, and yeah, let me know how I get on, and I might make a version 2. So what I've just done is removed the boring bits, and we're going to go straight to the trash. I'm wearing a bit of hit gear, a bit of expertise gear. I'm going to be tanking Skull. This is it's a bit hard for me to read the text on the preview, but this is the Vindicator. So this is the Paladin mob. He's going to Hammer of Justice, the tank, that's me. So Hammer of Justice, and it gets dispelled instantly. It is worth having one person not even bother healing, potentially, and just be there spamming the dispel key. We're going to bring the Vindicator to the back of the raid. The Vindicator, all he does is a stun and a heal, very simply tanked. So these are the Legionnaires. There are 2 of them, one marked cross, one marked triangle. This is cross, kill target number 2, and triangle, kill target number 3. These Legionnaires, as you see, do a whirlwind ability. Melee, be careful. Tanking 2 of these together isn't ideal this close, but melee can squeeze into one side, so they only get whirlwinded by one at a time. You want to run out of this. You can see the AoE effect going down on the screen right now. This is by one of the remaining ads. It doesn't do too much damage. You can tank and just stand in it. Oh, so it'll be the Scryer that does the AoE, because this one's not being CC'd. So you can CC everything here, but the Paladin mob that I started on will be doing a dispel. So this will break your sheeps with the dispel. So what we do is we drag the Paladin all the way to the entrance of the raid, if you saw where I was tanking it at the beginning. And then we come on to the Astromancer, which is the most annoying mob, does an AoE fireball that you saw there. So you want to make sure that the whole raid is full HP before you do this. Additionally, you can rely on health stones and just continuously be popping soul wells throughout the trash. And then we've got another Star Scryer at the end that's going to do his arcane AoE. Again, really easy to deal with, as long as you have like 2 sheeps and like a couple of warlocks to fear. That's enough people to do CC for Tempest Keep. There's also a patrol that looks like we're going to be picking up, so we keep our sheep. So we have the Marshal, which is Skull, who's going to be picked up, and then 2 Squires. The Squires are Paladins that don't do a Hammer of Justice, if I recall. I don't normally tank these mobs. And then you've got the Vindicator that does a whirlwind here. This whirlwind does hit quite hard, but you can be healed through it as the tank. So you just pull them apart, have the melee kill the little Paladin mobs, and have the ranged kill this Marshal mob, because the melee are going to have a bad time with the whirlwind. Okay, let's move on to some more trash. One more trash back, or a few more trash packs, then we've got the first boss. If you're confident you know what you're doing by now, you can skip this trash pack. It's more of the same. However, there are now 2 Vindicators, the Paladin mobs that stun on the pull. So I'm going to be tanking Skull. You can have one tank both Vindicators, but again, be mindful of the stun. So you do need someone to be dispelling. I'm going to get stunned in a second. Yep, and I'm going to dispelled in about a second. So the second Vindicator is tanked by another tank. Again, if you don't have this amount of tanks, you can tank both, but the raid damage, need to be aware that the tank is tanking 2, and there will be a Hammer of Justice, so you're not going to be pumping threat the entire time. So threat can be an issue if the tank is getting stunned, if you're tanking 2. Even with 1, you kind of want to be wary that, you're not going to be pumping out as much threat as you would normally as a tank. So the Paladins are getting killed, and now we're on the Legionnaires, who are going to be doing the whirlwind, and then it's more of the same. I just wanted to point out that you can tank 2 Vindicators if you need to. So now we jump to Allah's room. We have the Paladin pull, and he's going to drop a consecration and get everything on him, more or less. We're going to MD the Falconers to the tanks. So I'm going to be tanking Skull, and the other Falconer is going to be tanked by another tank. So 3 tanks used for this pull. So the Paladin has all of the bird ads, and 2 tanks have a Falconer each. So the Falconers are pretty straightforward. They do a really long range attack, so you can't move them anywhere very easily. And on this private server, the line of sight isn't perfect, so it's difficult to line of sight them. So it's a bit of a mess, us killing these Falconers, but they're straightforward enough, so it's not too much of a problem. And then once these Falconers are dead or near dead, I charge off and help out with the ads. Now these ads can be very difficult. So what we do is we have our Paladin stood in this corner, because these ads do a knockback with the wing buffet, whatever you want to call it. You can see that I've got a silence on me, which is a magic effect. This gets spam dispelled on the Paladin tank. You can dispel the silence. So the Paladin is getting silenced, he's getting dispelled, so he can continue to drop consecrations, okay? And do the rest of his Paladin utility. What you can do is, if you are stood in a corner and you're still getting knocked back by these birds, you can backpedal or strafe into the corner, so that when you do get knocked back, the game sort of thinks that you're already running in that direction in the corner, so you'll be knocked further into that corner instead of being stationary, where you can kind of get knocked any of the 360-degree angles away. So you do that once more, and then you come to Allah's platforms, where we have the Hawks. These are misdirected to the tank usually, and we tank them in this corner. They do a knockback and they do a mana drain thing. So you can't really pull more than 2 at once unless your raid is really stacked. Mana is going to be a limiting factor here. And getting them nicely stacked in the corner is also a big deal because of the knockback. Again, I don't feel like I need to backpedal or strafe in this corner for the knockback, but you do have to be very well stacked. Also, hunters, you can see our hunters are very close. I think in classic TBC, you might have to just melee as a hunter to avoid the charge. So when there's a charge by this mob, there's also going to be a knockback. And on this private server at least, these mobs don't do the charge and knockback too frequently. It's maybe once every 10 to 15 seconds. So if you were to have someone out of melee range like a hunter, then it wouldn't be the end of the world, but the melee wouldn't like it because they'd be having to run after the mob consistently, and then the tank would also have to be moving the mob into the corner again and again. So what you can do is, if that is the case in classic TBC, because on this server the hunters can attack quite close to the mob, and I definitely know in classic you have to be further away. There's more nuance involved with hunters in classic WoW in vanilla. Okay, so again, it's just the same mob. Let's go forward to the next pack. So the next pack is actually just on the other side, so you just clear them the same mobs. So this is Allah. I don't know how long I need to talk about Allah, but this is a pre-nerf version of Allah, so it's a little bit different. Anyway, in the nerfed version, Allah is always going to spawn or come down to one platform. So let's call that platform number 4, okay? For the nerfed version. So I just dual wield, put some Sunder Armors on. It's really good to use Moros's Lucky Pocket Watch for this fight. Allah's flying up, which means that he is going to be doing his, can't remember what it's called. This is just off the cuff. There's a massive AoE going on at the platforms. If you stand at the platforms, you're going to die. You can see that I've positioned myself as high up the ramp to the platform as I can without dying, just so it gives me the most, the biggest chance, the least amount of time to get into my position. So because this is a pre-nerf, I've got 2 platforms. There are 2 extra stations that the boss can fly to. I don't know if we're going to see that in this attempt. This footage is a few weeks old at this point. This was just a clean run that I copied off the Twitch stream in the description if people care. So he's started at that platform number 4, let's call it. He flies up to the middle. Everyone jumps off the platforms because the platforms are going to be a dead zone. And then he lands at another platform. So now he's flying off to, in the nerfed version, which I expect to see, platform 2. So platform 2 and platform 3 are both taken up by the bear. So it looked like so I have platform 1 to my left at the top of the ramp, but in the nerfed version, in the pre-nerf version, there were 2 extra locations up top by the entrance that both me and the warrior, just under the mini-map in the very distance, are taking as well. So you have 2 more platforms in the... Excuse me. Sorry, I've just eaten breakfast. We have 2 extra platforms in the pre-nerf version, just near the entrance at the top. And also we have more birds spawn. So every time the boss goes to a different platform, 3 ads are spawning in the pre-nerf version, but in the nerfed version, you only get 1 ad spawn. Also in the nerfed version, whenever you get 1 ad killed, 2% of the boss's HP is dealt to Allah. So the fight is a fair bit quicker in the nerfed version. You also have much more damage time on the boss because you have 1/3 of the ads to kill. So this is an opportunity for the paladin to wear fire resist gear to tank the small ads. You don't need any fire resist gear for Allah himself, so this is a good point to use Morose's Lucky Pocket Watch. The raid on the bottom is running to attack and to heal me, okay? It takes the raid a little bit of time to get to me. This is a prime opportunity to use Morose's Lucky Pocket Watch. If I don't think that a healer is underneath me healing me, or I don't see a pre-cast heal, I can just pop Morose's Lucky Pocket Watch and be feel a lot safer, really, because I'm probably going to dodge at least 1 attack until the healers get in range. So you can see this is now a pre-nerf location for the boss to go to. You won't see this if we get nerfed versions of bosses in TBC. So the boss would only go to the at the top of the ramp. No positions here for the nerfed version. And so you just stood here waiting a lot of the time as a tank. You want to just split your DPS on the little ads. You don't need many DPS on the little ads. If you only get 1 ad, a lot of the damage can be full time on the boss. You have a fair bit of time. Oh, he's flying up to the top. I'm calling jump down on Discord. So he flies up. He throws his AoE all around the top of the platforms. If you stand on the platforms, you are going to die. You can perhaps shield wall or last stand to survive it. So he's coming to my platform. I've got shield block up ready. There is no threat on Allah as long as you are the only melee. So on the pull, you want to be misdirecting the tank because there are melee who are going to be attacking the boss. This is one of the fights where melee is really not suggested because when the small lads are killed at the bottom, they do a knockback. So that can be a real nightmare for melee because they have to just stop attacking the mobs at some point, and they don't have the flexibility of attacking Allah and attacking the little ads at the bottom without having big issues. And one thing you can do is, what I was going to do was to commanding shout the bear tank. So what you can do is, you have a fair bit of time, like 40 seconds or so between platforms. So you can, run over and give other tanks commanding shout if they don't have it, or you can even debuff Allah, but that's more min-maxy stuff. And also, if you are a tank running on to help other tanks, you don't have to worry about threat against ranged. This boss will only attack people in melee range, unless there's no one in melee range, and then you get the debuff, which I have now, which increases fire damage taken, and also the attack deals fire damage. So that's kind of like how your raid wipes here. If your tank doesn't get into Allah's melee range quickly enough, or if there's no tank there to get into melee range. One thing that we've experimented before on private servers is sending a Shadow Priest pet. What's the Shadow Priest pet called? Can't remember. But the one that gives them mana back. That's kind of worked. Hunter pets should work. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't, except it's going to be really awkward to try and get a hunter pet there. Obviously, it's much better for the tank to get there. So if you're taking 2 platforms, if you're responsible for 2 platforms, you definitely need to have swiftness potions available. You definitely need to make sure you have the potion up as well. So for example, because this is a pre-nerf version, if he goes to the platform near the entrance near me, I'd have to swiftness pot and run to it. But you can see I don't need to do that. Oh, also, when the boss is about to go to a new platform, when the ads are about to spawn, you don't want to be using Thunderclap or Demo Shout because you can aggro these ads. And if I'm meant to be up at the platforms receiving Allah when he comes to my platform, I don't want to be messing about with ads. You can see now I'm just trying to help a little bit on ads because I've got a bit of time before Allah is going to be going to a platform. Also, see, that's not good. I think Allah's close to dying though, so I think I've just about got away with it. Oh, if he went to my platform, we could have probably wiped here, but I think Allah would have been killed before we'd have died. So we get more ads coming down. Ideally, you transition Allah by killing him the first time. For example, we don't want any damage on Allah now. We want everyone to kill the ads, because that way we don't transition into phase 2 with Allah on the ground phase as well as the ads. We want to ideally just transition with just Allah. We don't want Allah and ads. So you have a little bit of time from when you kill Allah for the first time. And we're just killing the ads. Got a bit of time until Allah comes back. So armor potion here is very useful. Also, you want to be mindful of the threat. So there's a complete threat reset on the boss here. So I just pick him up. Once you overgear this, you definitely want to be haste potioning. So I've got a debuff called Molten Armor, which I think gets rid of 100% of my armor. So I'm taking like more than twice damage. And this is when you need the boss to be taunted off you. And this is one of the few times where I actually pulled aggro back off the tank who taunted. So yeah, be mindful, because on this server we take a Molten Armor very early on, like 10 seconds or so, 15 seconds after the boss comes up. So you can, like I just did, pull aggro off the taunting tank. Just be mindful of that, because you can die, like you have such limited armor. Okay, so the boss then goes up and like reanimates or something. I'll go through that when we do it again. So the boss is back. Oh, also you need people to be in melee range. Like you need a tank to be in melee range. So the boss is tauntable. So if at any point the boss is doing his AoE fire damage and increased fire damage debuff to everybody, you want to just make sure that someone just taunts it to interrupt him from spamming that, which is what wipes the raid. There's also flame patches that spawn. The debuff stacks very quickly, increasing fire damage taken. So the boss flies up to the center of the room. We need to stack because there's going to be a like a fire comet thing come down. The damage is spread between all those who receive damage, so it's not that big of a deal as long as you are all stacked. You can use Snake Trap to increase the split of damage. So let's say that you've lost 5 of your players and the damage split is going to be split with only 20 players. You can do a Snake Trap with, let's say, has 5 snakes. Once that Snake Trap is triggered and the snakes are out, you'll then have 25 people and snakes to split the damage. And one thing you can do also, which makes Morose's Lucky Pocket Watch very good for this encounter, is if, say, for example, you lose one of your tanks, or if you're going for like a progress kill or something where you want to play it super, super safe. This fight in phase 2 is designed for 2 tanks. So when one of you have the armor reduction debuff, the other tank won't. So when my armor reduction melt armor debuff ends, I know that the boss is going to be doing his melt armor on the current tank very soon. So the current tank, let's say that I've died and the current tank is tanking the boss, and like a minute's passed or however long the malt armor debuff lasts, you can just use Morose's Lucky Pocket Watch and dodge the molten armor debuff. I don't know if it's going to be dodgeable in TBC Classic. I don't remember how it was in retail, but on this private server at least you can dodge the molten armor, which is very good, particularly if you've lost the tank and like if you have molten armor, you can shield wall it, but after shield wall ends, you're going to be 2-shot, and it's going to be a bad time. So again, you just tank and spank this until the end. Like some ads spawn, and the paladin just takes care of that, and you can slowly kill the ads. This will be a little bit different because this is the pre-nerf version, but the nerf version is only going to be easier. Okay, let's go on to some new trash. I've spoken about Alar for ages. One thing I should add is I don't think that once you first enter Tempest Keep, you should go straight for Alar. Void Reaver tends to be the easiest boss. So now we have a Astromancer Lord. So this is a mob that does another debuff, which is dispellable. She does a dragon breath. So just have someone dispelling that, or you can have a tank taunt off the dragon breath tank. And then we have 2 Legionnaires or Vindicators. Legionnaires. These are the guys that do the whirlwind. So just tank them apart and kill them easy peasy. I quite like this pack, the Crystal Core Sentinels. So these guys need to be tanked apart from each other unless you can safely survive their AoE. So they're going to be doing 2 casts. One is the Overcharge, which wants to be spell reflected, and one is this charged arcane something or other. So this does big AoE damage, and they both cast it at the same time. It doesn't kill somebody on its own, but if you are in range of both of these Sentinels, and they both do 50% damage each to you, let's say, you're going to die. But if you've got enough HP, then you'll be fine. So we just tank them apart, and apparently I'm already marking the next pack. But there's an ad behind us, which is, near the doorway to this area. There you go, you can see him now. So this next pull is the most notorious, I think. So you want to MD the Squires, which are paladins, to 2 tanks and drag them out of the raid. Now, if these mobs are easy, you can just paladin tank them and AoE them down. If you can't do that, which is the preferred method, you want to be CCing them. The problem with CCing them is before you get these Squires pulled out of range, these Squires are going to be spam dispelling any sheeps and fears as well, I think. So if you are a mage sheeping or a warlock fearing, you need to cast your sheep or fear and then immediately recast your sheep and fear on that same target. Don't get greedy and think about your damage. You need to be CCing mobs. There are multiple AoE mobs that are being CC'd from you, and if mages aren't keeping their mobs locked down on the CC, your raid can take a lot of AoE damage. I appreciate this is a very poor point of view for seeing this pack, but we have like the Scryer mobs that do their AoE volleys, and generally it's a very healing intensive pack. You're very happy to use lusts here as well, just to get these packs cleared efficiently. You'll have it again for the boss. And again, if I were to redo this video in more depth and with a script, I'd grab a Twitch stream clip of someone else in the raid who's streaming and just show their POV. So that's if you enjoyed this video so far, leave a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. Yo, this is really good. I would really like a more refined edited version of this for better information. Okay, let's move on. And again, it's the same for this pack. The Squires are marked, and then it's the same mobs that we've done before. It's the Astromancers and the Scryers, which are going to be doing AoE damage, and you want to be CCing those as a priority. So this gives a little bit more context to the last pack that we were doing. Also, I like to focus my Squire, just in case I need to pick something else up. I always have a good reference to the mob that I'm assigned to. If something goes wrong and I need to be targeting other mobs, I can quickly go back to my main target. So now we're in Solarian's room. We have a caster in the middle, followed by 2 whirlwinding Vindicators, I believe. So this Nether Scryer does a mind control effect, which is pretty, potentially deadly. So there are 2 patrols. This is the one on the outside, and there's another patrol running around on the inside. So we want to be standing on the outside of the room just so that we don't pull the patrol. You can see I get mind controlled. you just scream on Discord, tank MC'd, and another tank should taunt. You can try and CC the mind controllers, or they can just get killed apparently, which is what happened here. War Stomps are really useful. You don't want to be fearing for fear of getting the patrol. And then you've got these Legionnaires that are doing the whirlwind. Don't bring the Legionnaires into the raid, obviously, because they're whirlwind. Additionally, you can pull everything out into the previous room and drag it out of Solarian's room if you want to have a bit more breathing room versus the patrol. On this raid night, maybe we should have, because we've got a few people dead. Okay, so then, like I say, there's a second patrol of the exact same makeup of this. You've got the mind controlling Squire and the 2 Legionnaire whirlwind guys. Right, let's press on to the next pack. So it's more of the same here. I'm just going to be tanking the Squires, which are dispelling, and we're going to be CCing as many of the troublesome ads as we can. They're the Squires, and I think we're still getting Astromancers here. So we're pulling out the Paladin mobs that are dispelling as soon as we can. These are misdirected to the tanks. We've got 3 Squires on this pack, so 3 tanks. You could have 1 tank tanking 2. They don't do too much damage as long as a healer is assigned to healing these tanks. And then in the background you can see we have our Paladin and our Warlocks fearing, just making sure that the NPCs that are going to be dealing raid damage are CC'd. It's a bit of a mess sometimes, but you just all zerg down 1 target. Like, you can do a countdown and have everyone cast on Skull so that 1 mob is dead pretty much immediately. You do want to have the Paladin initiate the pull. This is something that's critical. I can't stress this enough. So on these packs, let's just cut to another pack and I'll go over it. So you'll see our Paladin is initiating the pull. This is critical because every single mob is going to run straight to the Paladin on the pull. Okay? And then the threat and everything is going to be worked out and the mobs will attack whoever they want to attack. But it's critical that on the pull, everything runs into the Paladin's consecration. But before the mobs that are assigned to sheep run into the consecration, the sheep needs to land. So you do need a very clear countdown. So the Paladin pulls, everything runs towards the Paladin because he's the only player that the mobs can see. Apparently we're wiping here, ha ha ha. And then the sheeps need to land from between the Paladin pulling and the mob that you're sheeping touching the consecration. So I hope that's clear. So here we are at Solarian. I'm so not familiar with the nerfed version of Solarian, you'll have to apologise. I'm just bashing out this video off the cuff with no script. I would look into actually the nerfed version of Solarian to make sure that the information I'm giving is as accurate as it can be. Basically, I dual wield here because the boss doesn't do any physical attacks. It's all just arcane missile spam, and she will arcane missile spam a random player in front of her. So I just face her away from the raid so that every single arcane missile is on me. When we are talking about the nerfed version, the boss is going to be doing the Wrath of the Astromancer debuff. So this is a critical debuff, and back in the day there used to be add-ons that you could install which would just do like a massive siren or like make your screen blue if you had this debuff, because it's one of the easiest ways to wipe the raid. So for the nerfed version, you stack your entire raid together apart from the main tank, and 1 random player will get the Wrath of the Astromancer debuff, and that does AoE damage, but it does less damage the more people who take the AoE damage. So it's good to be stacked. However, 6 seconds after having the debuff, you get knocked into the air and you take a slow fall, like you don't take full damage. However, everyone within 10 yards also gets thrown up into the air. They take about 6k arcane damage as well as 90% of their HP as full damage. So you're going to kill anybody who's next to you basically. So you take AoE damage and you just walk out of the raid and more than 10 yards away from the raid, and then you get thrown up in the air and you survive the full damage. Anyone within 10 yards gets thrown up in the air as well. They take arcane damage and the full damage that you don't take as the original debuff person, and you kill them. But on this nerfed version, it's a little bit different. How the debuff works is different. I'm not going to dwell on it too much. You won't need arcane resist gear if it's the nerfed version of the boss. On retail, this boss had at least 2, maybe 3 different versions. But yeah, it's the one that I've just mentioned is the version that we had for the longest time in TBC by far, and probably is what we're going to get. As soon as we know about, if we're going to get pre-nerf or nerfed versions, I might again remake this video and go into more detail about all the mechanics that could be different. Okay, and then we go into phase 2 where it's just tank and spank. If you do get a good attempt and Solarian is on 40% HP, 50% HP, and it's looking good, you want to Fear Ward the tank early, just so that 3 minutes of the Fear Ward cooldown can elapse and you can get another Fear Ward from the tank. So let's say we're 50% HP on the boss. I'll whisper or say on Discord to one of the priests, Fear Ward me. When you are asking for a Fear Ward, ask by the person's name. Say, Adal, I want your Fear Ward now, please. And then you will get Adal's Fear Ward. The worst thing you can do is say, Fear Ward me, and then all 2 or 3 priests in the raid Fear Ward you, and all of them have a 3-minute cooldown now on their Fear Ward. Okay, great. You receive a fear, you're immune to it, it consumes the 1 Fear Ward you have, and now you have to wait for another 3 minutes to get another Fear Ward, and that's awful. Okay, let's just move on to phase 3 quickly. Phase 2 quickly. So once you bring Solarian to 20% HP, she reaches phase 2. Oh, I forgot there's ads as well that spawn. I'm doing an awful job. Like, if you want a better version of this, please just leave me a comment to say, please make a better version of this. And, if there's enough feedback, then, I'll sit down and put in the hours, okay? But I don't want to make a long video that takes hours and hours to make if people don't really care about it. So I've got a Fear Ward on me. She goes into this void form. The threat stays the same. I've never had any threat problems, and there is a fear. Now, one thing you can do, because I find that threat is very easy in this last phase. One thing you can do is just go into Berserker stance if you don't have access to Fear Ward, and literally just stand in Berserker stance. And as soon as you get feared, because it's an instant with no cast time, you can Berserker Rage out of the fear. So the only way you can die is by your HP reaching 0 and wipe the raid. So the only way you can wipe is by your HP reaching 0 and not by you getting feared. I think, is it a 6-second fear? Like, I've been feared once by the boss. And she'll just run around killing people whilst you're in the fear. As soon as you get into phase 2, with any appreciable amount of the raid being alive, it's a guaranteed kill. Okay, so let's go on to the last set of trash and then the last boss. Woohoo, we're nearly done. Haha, I lied. We didn't do Void Reaver yet. Okay, so here we are on the way to Void Reaver. So, we've got this Devastator, which is fairly straightforward. Just tank it and spank it. Easy. Okay, next mobs. Actually, one thing I will say is they have a threat drop mechanic. So if you're very quick on the draw, as soon as the mob targets somebody else, you can just hit taunt and the mob will come back straight to you and you'll be on your merry way. What you can do is also, because there's a knockback, you can have one of your tanks just stand in the range camp, and if this mob does a threat drop thing, the tank and the mob starts running towards the casters, have one tank in the range. So you see, I taunted there quickly enough that the mob didn't really move. But if you're not quick enough, you can just have a tank sat in the caster group to taunt it if the mob does come to the range camp. Okay, moving on. We've got these Sentinels, the same again. Spread them out. So one of them gets pulled back and one of them gets pushed forward. Spread them out. Spell reflect their overcharge thing. And don't get hit by both of the AoEs. So I'm spell reflecting. No, I get hit. Do I get hit by it? No, I reflect it. Okay, good. And you can see the range camp in the middle on circle. So they're outranging both of the AoEs. It's a bit risky because if the tanks don't spread the ads out enough, that range camp is squashed and killed by both of these Sentinels AoEs. But I think if you have max caster range, you'll be fine. So we are now in Void Reaver's room. We have another Crystal Core Devastator, I think that's what it's called. It's really hard for me to read it on my preview. Yeah, I just paused it. It is a Devastator. Okay, cool. So we have some demons as well. So we have a demon and a humanoid. So the humanoid can of course be sheeped. The demon can be banished. This is a Devastator. Again, he does like an AoE as well as the threat drop thing. So you can be really quick on the draw again to taunt, or you can just have any of the other tanks taunting, or if you want to play it super safe, have a player in the range camp and then just have them taunt once the mob comes to the range camp. You can see it gets a little bit messy, particularly when taunt goes on cooldown. And this is actually a good example. I was going to move on to the other mobs, but because that mob does a knockback, I think we end up pulling another... So this is the patrol. So we kill the static mobs, not the patrol first. And you can see I get hit by a grenade. It's the Tempest Smiths that do a grenade, which CCs you. You don't want to be stacked ideally for that. Although if you're pulling just one pack at a time, it doesn't matter if like your whole raid gets CC'd for like 5 seconds or whatever, because you'll just survive. And when I say survive, I mean like from a tank point of view. The grenade will never kill people generally. They'll just CC them. That's the most annoying part. So Crystal Core mechanics, these have like a recharge. It's a heal ability that they'll do on another NPC. So if you kill one at once, they won't do any kind of recharge and healing. But if you have this mob as well as anything else, it will be recharging them. They recharge each other, and I think they recharge the robots, the Crystal Core Devastators. I don't think they recharge the Tempest Smith, the humanoid, but you can see the recharge spell going off now as a channel. You can Mortal Strike to reduce the healing of the recharge target, but if you don't have a MS Warrior, you can also use Aimed Shot from one of your many hunters. And it's the Tempest Smith that does... Oh, apparently I'm filling out a questionnaire. It's the Tempest Smiths that do the grenade. I think it's on a random raid member. So the Spell Shock, that's the grenade that they throw, and you can see you get CC'd for a little bit. And there's the patrol. So we kill the static mobs first, and then we kill the patrol. Whatever's easiest, whatever means that you're not pulling 2 packs at once. And then the last pack I'm going to show you, we have the Sentinels, which are the ones you spread out and you reflect the overcharge. And then we have the demons that you banish, and the humanoids that throw the grenades that you sheep. And this is just, again, it's the same mobs we've killed before, but a different mix-up for the pack. So straightforward, just CC everything and kill the Sentinels as if you were on your way to Void Reaver's room. It's the same Sentinels, you've just got mob CC'd in the back. Okay, so second to last boss. You can see why I want some good feedback before I make the, like, you know, if I were to spend loads of time making this, because this is going to take forever to do this video series. Or it might be a single video. Anyway, wear some threat gear, get some hit expertise, but the priority is staying alive always. So here we go, we pull. It's nice to have the person who's going to be the worst at getting threat starting the fight, because it means that they can get some good solid threat straight away. So that's me. Hello. I'm tanking Void Reaver to start. You really want to be popping haste potions on this fight when you're not tanking the boss. I think that's the best time to use them. The single best piece of information I can give for when you're on this fight is it's not a damage race. It's a keeping threat on the tanks race. So with that said, you basically want to be feeding your lusts or your heroisms into your tank group, and anyone who's high on threat can be a real issue. He's a mechanical NPC, so bleeds don't work. So your Fury Warriors, your Arms Warriors won't be doing as much threat as they perhaps could, which is a good thing because they have no way of dropping their threat. Warlocks need to be very careful when they use their Shatter, as well as like Invis for mages and Feigned Deaths. Like, you need to be very conscious of your threat. The reason you want to be very conscious of your threat is because Ideally, you 3-tank this fight, and you want to be below all 3 tanks. So in most fights, you just want to be below the main tank, but there's a massive threat drop mechanic that the boss does. He does a spell, I can't remember what it's called, or an ability that reduces the current target's threat by a certain percentage. This will almost certainly change who the boss is attacking, and he'll attack the person second on his threat. And then you have a 3rd tank in the mix because the threat drop is so big that you can sometimes drop multiple ranks in the threat list, so that you need extra time to build your threat back up. One amazing ability that this boss does, which makes it, actually killable in my eyes, is the pound. So every 20 seconds or so, the boss does a pounding that lasts 3 seconds that deals AoE damage to the entire raid. Now this is critical because it means that as a paladin tank, you're taking damage so you can get more mana back. As a warrior, you're taking damage so you can get killed when the boss targets you. But yeah, you can get rage when you're targeted. And again, for druids, you can get rage when targeted. One thing I like to do, but I have since stopped doing it, is in order to do extra threat on the boss, I like to dual wield. Hashtag classic strats. But obviously, like we saw then, when the boss targets me, when he does the threat drop on his current tank, it can lead to death. So now I just forego the extra threat that I get from dual wielding and just wear a shield because it's not worth dying. You can always tell DPS to stop doing damage. You can't say tank increase your or reduce your what's it called? Like a reaction time to putting on a shield and popping shield block. Anyway, let's skip forward to an attempt where we probably kill it, because I think it's probably a wipe, because it is very difficult to do it with 2 tanks. So here we are on a better attempt. Hopefully it's the kill. One thing you can also use is the Grace of Air totem. I think that's the name of it. The one that reduces threat caused. Instead of using like a spell damage totem or a Wind Fury totem, Shamans also have their air totem, Wrath of Air totem. No, that's the damage one, isn't it? Oh, I can't remember what it's called. Again, if I had a script, I'd look it up. The totem that reduces threat. It's really useful for every group apart from obviously the tank group. So he does the knockback. That's the threat drop. He targets the next person. That's Jiki, the paladin. I go to dual wield. One thing you also can do to min-max as a warrior is when the pounding is on its way, you can go into Berserker stance and use Berserker Rage. This, as you just saw I do, increases the rage I get from damage taken. So when he does his pounding, I get lots and lots of rage. And yeah, I mean, the boss went straight to me. That is unusual that he would go to me straight away like that. Anyway, that's Void Reaver. It's not a damage fight. There is an Enrage Timer, which is a hard Enrage. However, I think that particularly people coming from Classic, the Enrage Timer isn't going to be a problem at all. The problem will be tank threat. And apparently in that last attempt, tank deaths. But yeah, tank threat is going to be the biggest bottleneck here. As long as you're ahead of the Enrage Timer, you can tell everyone in your raid to just ease off on the damage. Just stop damage for everyone in the raid. Stop damage for 30 seconds. Wait until you're in line with the Enrage Timer. Let's say, for example, the boss is at 30% and you're 30%, or you've got like 40% of the Enrage Timer. Just wait for that extra 30% of the Enrage Timer so you're neck and neck with the Enrage. And that extra, 20 seconds or so, 30 seconds, will allow your tanks to get 30 seconds more threat. So you can see here, people start to get really reckless with their threat, and any one of these people pulling threat can just wipe the raid, So what happens often is you might get your first kill, and then subsequent kills, people will just be like, oh, well, this is an easy boss, Everyone says that Void Reaver is easy, and it might be very easy on a classic TBC, but in the last couple of years on private servers where I've been playing, you do have to be careful still. You can't just just spam Shadow Bolt and expect to win. You'll be spamming Shadow Bolt and you'll get killed by the boss. Once one person pulls threat, it's very easy for multiple people to just drop. Okay, and that's Void Reaver. Okay, let's get on to the last set of trash before Kel'thas, and let's go over Kel'thas quickly. So this is maybe, this isn't the hardest trash. The hardest trash is the pulls before you get to the Solarian room. But this is probably the second hardest trash, or the third hardest trash. I don't know. So we've got Blood Knights, we've got Centurions, and we've got Battle Mages. So the Blood Knights are dragged out because, again, these Paladin-looking mobs are going to be doing dispels. It will interrupt or dispel your CC. We're killing these ones first, it seems, but we've changed this. Again, this is old footage. We kill the Battle Mage. We kill one Battle Mage first. The Battle Mages on this server they can basically one-shot your tanks. So these are kited. So these Battle Mages do a blizzard. They also hit very, very hard. They can be dispelled, yada, yada, yada. And they can be sheeped, as you see. But they can also be kited. So what we do now is we kill one of the Battle Mages first and just keep it slowed. And then whoever, mostly a Warlock or a Hunter, is being targeted, and they just run away with it. These Centurions, they do a very nasty, essentially it's a whirlwind, but it's like an arcane flurry thing. So it's magic damage in the form of a whirlwind effect, basically. So we're going to be breaking, I don't know what we're going to be breaking first. Centurion? What are we breaking first? Come on, do something. Nothing's happening. We're breaking the Centurion. Whenever you're breaking a Centurion that's being feared, it can be running anywhere, really. Make sure that no one in the raid is stood near it. You can help out by dragging it away. We've learnt that CC will interrupt the Arcane Flurry. So you can Death Coil it, fear it, and go for a sheep on it, and it'll interrupt. See, this Battle Mage nearly one-shot me there. I don't think these Battle Mages are going to hit this hard in Classic TBC. That would be a little bit unreasonable. But we just... you can sheep them to interrupt their melee swing, and you can just keep them slowed. So now we don't really have anyone in melee range of them. Well, none of the tanks at least. We just kite them and kill them, just because their melee damage is very high. And you can see they're doing a Cone of Cold and a Frost Volley. So they are a little bit dangerous to have out with any other mobs at the same time. And again, you can see why we kite them on this server. So fairly straightforward. Just be careful of the Centurion, the Arcane Flurry. No one wants to be close to that. The tanks can survive it, but it still hits quite hard. And much like any of the other hallways, we have a patrol, we have an Inquisitor, and then we have, I think it's 2 Centurions again. So this Inquisitor, instead of doing frost spells, just like shadow spells. This is kited as well, I think, on this private server, just because it hits very, very hard. But it's not too much of an issue. And then again, these patrolling mobs, it's 2 Centurions. I can read the text now. And again, when you're breaking them out of sheep, they can do an Arcane Flurry pretty much immediately. So I just yell, watch for the whirlwind is what I call it. As soon as you break them, because if there are any casters or any melee nearby, they're just going to get absolutely chopped in half. Okay, so this is finally in Kel'thas's room. We made it, finally. Whew. Yeah, 48 minutes in, we finally made it. Okay, so we've got Blood Knights, we've got Inquisitor, we've got like an Arcane Flurry, another guy. So the Inquisitor is killed first. He hits really hard. The triangle, the Blood Knight is going to be dispelling the CC. So we take... Oh, the Blood Knight is also healing. So triangle is taken... The Blood Knight is taken out of line of sight to the hallway where we came into this boss room. I'm tanking Skull. So the Marshal is one of the mobs that I think we got at the beginning of the instance. It does a whirlwind. That's all you need to worry about it. And this Inquisitor just hits hard. And then the Centurion, which is sheeped behind me, does his whirlwind. But the most important mob is the Blood Knight, which got pulled into the hallway. Hopefully we'll see it in a second. The triangle mob. This one does a heal and does a dispel. So this is why it's dragged out of line of sight. You want to obviously assign healers to this tank because they're going to be out of line of sight of all the other healers. But it's very straightforward once you you do it once and you just say, okay, we're happy to have, the healers doing what they're doing, the tanks doing what they're doing, the CC is doing what they're doing, and you just repeat it again and again until you clear all of the mobs in Kel'thas's room. Okay, cool. So let's move over to Kel'thas himself. Okay, so we're finally here. Props to anyone who's watching this 50-minute video so far and has made it. Well done. So we are finally here on Kel'thas. We'll go over it as well as I can. Again, this is unscripted. Again, leave a comment and a like telling me that you'd really like to see a more in-depth video because I can. There are several people in the raid who stream, every now and then. We've got like a Holy Priest POV, Moonkin POV, Rogue POV. So yeah, I can just pull in their clips and also talk to them and say, what do they struggle with for the encounter? What do they do to maximize their class and their assignments? So first of all, we start off with Telonicus. Thaladred. It's so hard for me to read the names. So Thaladred, he's a warrior. He runs towards a random raid member. He does his gaze, which is the focus mechanic on the player. There is a cooldown on it. So as melee, you are safe to attack until the cooldown of the gaze is up. You do not want to be in melee range of him when he targets someone new. He targets you and he kills you. You do not want to be in melee range when his gaze cooldown is ready. So basically on the pull or when you're killing the first guy, you can fear ward the tank. That's me. I'm going to be tanking Lord Sanguinar. He looks like a paladin, but he doesn't really do paladin abilities. He does a thrash and he does a bellowing roar. He basically does a fear. So he jumps onto me. Hello. He does a thrash. So he attacks 3 times in quick succession. You definitely want to be able to survive the thrash because he's going to be doing it repeatedly. You do want a chonky boy to be tanking Sanguinar. We kill him quickly enough that he only does 1 fear. So my 1 fear ward is enough. Bellowing roar, I'm immune, lovely. And we kill him. There's no second fear. However, Deadly Boss mod is nice enough to show the cooldown of his fear. So I just look at that Deadly Boss mod, and when the fear is off cooldown, I know that he's going to be fearing very, very soon. So as soon as I see the next cast bar, I jump into Berserker Stance, I Berserker Rage, I'm immune to the fear, I drop into Defensive Stance, easy peasy. You can also pre-cast the Berserker Rage because it happens like clockwork on this server at least. However, for the first few pulls on Classic TBC, I would be looking specifically for just the cast bar. So this is a very, very bad POV of the next boss. Can't remember what her name is. It's the warlock-looking night elf girl. She is, let me pause it, Grand Astromancer Capernian or something. Capernian? I think that's the name of the NPC. So you have a warlock tank in shadow resist gear tanking this. We've got Mom tanking it. Or was it fire resist gear? I think it's fire resist gear. Sorry. She's casting shadow bolts, but it's fire resist gear. Anyway, she does fire and shadow. Just have the warlock tank her. Everyone at max range. She does like a knockback to anyone who's close. RIP Shadow Priests. You're going to struggle using Mind Flay. There's also void zones that appear under random players' feet. There is a max range on the void zone. Us melee who are doing nothing on this mob, we're never going to get a void zone. So basically, once you're sat at max range as a caster, just stare at your feet. As soon as there's a void zone, move. You obviously want to be standing at max range and spread out so that you don't get void zones under multiple people. So now we are on Telonicus. He's the hunter-looking engineer guy. He's throwing bombs at our bear tank. He throws the bomb where the tank is, and throughout the cast of the bomb, if you move, you can dodge the bomb because the bomb will only land where the location of its target was at the start of the bomb cast. So you can, if you're quick enough, dodge every single bomb. I don't recommend you do this because you can very easily get rage starved if you're I struggle. Why am I saying these wrong class names? If you're tanking it as a warrior or a druid, you can get rage starved. So I actually think you should take a bomb when you're low rage. He also does a thing that silences casters if you get healed, so you don't want to be taking bombs because you're going to be needing a lot of heals, and the casters can get silenced healing you. There's also a toy debuff, which will last, I think, a minute, which will periodically stun you. You can free action potion to get rid of this. However, free action potion only lasts 30 seconds. The debuff lasts, I think, a minute. So that, once you have the last 30 seconds, you can just fap it and ignore it. So we then have the weapons that spawn. Cosmic Infuser is the one you want to kill first. It does a cast heal as well as a Holy Nova. So don't worry too much about AoEing, because the Holy Nova from the Cosmic Infuser is just going to be healing the AoE that you're trying to do. So single target Cosmic Infuser, and then you can go for some nice AoE. Once the Cosmic Infuser is very low HP, I drag it out of the raid so it can be more easily clicked on, and you can loot the legendary Cosmic Infuser weapon. If you're a healer, do not all grab the Cosmic Infuser at the same time, because tanks will die, okay? Next is Devastation. Let's talk about Devastation. That's being tanked by the Bear tank. Devastation does a Whirlwind. It is stunnable. So we have our Paladin tank stun it when it does its Whirlwind. We have the Bear stun it when it does its Whirlwind. And also, I can, if I'm in range, War Stomp, but I don't really War Stomp it very often. But Devastation is something you need to have away from the raid, okay? We've got Warp Slicer. We've got the Staff, which has already died. And we have the Bulwark. The Warp Slicer does a stacking debuff. It doesn't hit that hard, if I'm honest. The Bulwark reflects a little bit of damage, like thorns, if you like. Like it counterattacks a little bit. We've got the Staff doesn't do anything interesting. It does like it does a Frost Nova. So you might want to call for a Dispel if you're trying to drag your weapon out of the raid so that people can click on it. And the Bow, we have that tanked by Hunters. You want to face it away from the raid because it does like a multi-shot, and it also like does a threat drop mechanic, I think, which is why you want multiple people to be tanking it. But just have the Hunters damage that off to the side. Okay, so as soon as you enter this stage, you want to have a Fear Ward on you, because Sanguinar, as soon as he's reanimated, will instantly cast a Fear. One thing you can do is just outrange the first Fear and then pick him up. You can see he does the Fear. We weren't able to kill all of the weapons before the reanimation of the ads. We're now fighting all of the ads at the same time. So we can see we have Thaladred, coming in to focus people, as well as all the other ads. Again, it's quite a bad POV to see it from my perspective here. So he targets me. Oh, this is a great POV. So he targets me, and I can't just drag my fearing guy Sanguinar into the raid because he does a Fear. You don't want to be dragging I can't remember his name. Okay, I just went back and had a look. Thaladred. So he's the guy who does the gaze. He also does a silence to anyone who's close to him. So if you are getting targeted by Thaladred, you do not want to pull him into the raid or the caster camp, because he'll be silencing people. You do have the legendary weapons. The shield that I should have on now absorbs a lot of damage, and the main hand increases my swing speed and my run speed. The staff is very important because this makes you immune to a disorient effect, and I think silence. There's also the mace, which increases your it reduces fire damage or spell damage taken, which is critical for when you're fighting Kel'thas in the next phase. And the daggers have a chance on hit to break mind control. All of these are very critical buffs, debuffs, on use effects because of phase 3. Also in this phase, I can get disorientated. It's a debuff that means I'm CC'd for I think 6 seconds, and in that time, likewise, if I get feared, my mob Lord Sanguinar will just run around and attacking the next on threat, and that's not going to be a tank. So I put my Legendary Shield on. You can use the Legendary Shield earlier. It's a mistake for me to not have it on earlier. You can use it defensively in that phase just to stay alive with the on-use effect. So we go straight into Kel'thas Phase here. If you're quick on damage, you can just be stood here doing nothing, waiting for Kel'thas to come up. But on your progress attempts, you're probably still going to be fighting 1, if not 2, of the adds left. Just make sure that people are healing and interrupting Kel'thas. So Kel'thas is kind of interesting. He does a mind control randomly on players. So this is when they need to be attacked by the legendary daggers. So anyone who can wield a dagger should basically be picking up a dagger, except for healers maybe. They should maybe focus on healing. But warriors pick up the dagger, rogues, anyone basically. Just pick up the dagger and just auto attack, or use a hamstring, something with a a global cooldown, which will get the dagger hitting more frequently than just the auto attack. It's very useful. Oh, he's done his Flame Strike in melee range. So I just call out on Discord, Flame Strike in melee, and you pull the boss to one side. The damage from the Flame Strike is larger than the animation. Also, we did have one wipe where we had a Hunter Slow Trap down, and we had a Flame Strike in the Hunter Trap, and people couldn't see the animation of the Flame Strike. So people actually were stood in the Flame Strike, but they couldn't see it because it was under the Frost Trap. Anyway, the boss also does a Pyroblast. This was a bit buggy on this stage of the boss on this server. Basically, he doesn't Pyroblast very often, but what he should do is he should regularly Pyroblast. He has a shield, which makes him immune to interrupts. So you need to damage the shield in order to interrupt the Pyroblast. So he's going to almost always, because you don't have the damage to break the shield quickly, he's going to do one Pyroblast on the tank. You need to use the legendary shield. Just, right click it or keybind it and use the on-use effect of the shield. And this will absorb a lot of damage, which will be the entirety of the Pyroblast. And then he chain casts Pyroblasts until he gets interrupted. So you need to keep damaging the boss to destroy his Absorb Shield. And then once the Absorb Shield is taken off, you interrupt the Pyroblast. So if he does the first Pyroblast, you use the Legendary Shield to absorb it, nice. He then continues to chain cast Pyroblast because you haven't interrupted it yet. You need to kill the Absorb Shield. So if he does his second Pyroblast, you need to use a cooldown to survive it, unless you have basically near enough BIS tier 5 gear. I can just about survive it. However, I would always recommend you use a cooldown. So what you can do is use Last Stand on the first one, and then Shield Wall on the second one, if you aren't breaking the barrier in time to interrupt the second Pyroblast. The first Pyroblast, always use the Legendary Shield. Second Pyroblast, if you haven't damaged the shield to interrupt it, use Last Stand, use Shield Wall, and then use Nightmare Seed if you have access to Nightmare Seed. I believe Nightmare Seed is I can't remember what patch Nightmare Seed comes out. I don't know if it's available this early on in the game. Anyway, that's pretty much this phase, and then he'll fly up in the air. Let's go to that and go talk about the Floaty Phase. So at 50% HP, he will fly into the air, and he will destroy the ceiling, and we'll be out in space. And then we get the gravity lapse thing, and then we float around. So a lot of people think that we go into the gravity phase here. We go back into a tank and spank phase after this. It's the same as before. He's just, going into his final phase thing. It does look really cool. Look, the ceiling just gets destroyed. And now we are in space. Ooh, very cool. and then he comes down, and then it's more of the same. One thing I will stress though is anytime you have any downtime like this or after a gravity lapse, you need to ensure that the tank is receiving heals still from the Cosmic Infuser, the legendary mace, because this will put a buff on the tank, reducing damage by his Fireblast, fireball thing he does. This is regularly interrupted by our melee. However, you really need the buff, because if it doesn't get interrupted, it's going to almost one-shot you, and you can easily die. So now we're into the gravity lapse. So what you want to do is spread out, because his nether beam is like a chain lightning, and it's going to kill you. And the more people it attacks, the more damage it does. And then these little shadow balls with a bit of lightning, pink lightning on them, these are really, really bad. These, if you stand near them for any amount of time, they very quickly have a stacking debuff, which reduces your maximum HP. So if you're a tank and you're near these for even 5 seconds, you've probably wiped the raid. You just want to keep moving your camera and making sure that you can see and get a perspective on the shadow balls, just to make sure that you are not anywhere near them, because if you're stood near them for like 3 or 4 seconds, your HP is just going to get destroyed, and you don't want to be tanking this boss with 15k HP, particularly, you're just going to die. Although it is a lot easier, because he does stop casting Pyroblasts in this last phase, I believe. So this is just very much it's a tank and spank, move out of the flame strike and survive the gravity lapse. So just, Hellstone if you're taking damage. You can also first aid during the gravity lapse. That's something that is very much unrepresented in raids in my experience. And it's all about staying alive. Oh, shit. I haven't mentioned the Phoenixes once. Okay, so throughout the whole of the Kel'thas tanking phases, there will be Phoenixes that spawn. So when the boss casts Pyroblast, this is the paramount damage requirement for the fight. Your tank will die if you don't attack the boss during Pyroblast, kill his absorb shield, and interrupt the Pyroblast. Okay, that's rule number 1. Attack the boss when he casts Pyroblast. Rule number 2 is killing the egg. So when Phoenixes spawn, they are tanked to one side of the room because they do a pulsing damage fire aura. And when the Phoenix is dead, an egg will spawn. You need to kill the egg quickly, or else the egg will hatch and you'll get another Phoenix spawning. And then throughout the boss fight, Phoenixes continue to spawn. And then because you'll have one that just spawns, and you'll have one that comes and hatches out the egg, and all of a sudden you've got 2 Phoenixes, and then you've got 2 eggs, and it gets very crazy very quickly. So you need to, the paramount objective is to interrupt the Pyroblast and damage his absorb shield. After that, you want to be using cooldowns on the egg. But once you get him into the gravity lapse phase, the final phase, he will no longer be casting Pyroblast, so the only damage requirement here is killing the eggs. There is like a soft enrage. Your legendary weapons do not last forever. There is a duration on them. I can't remember if it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I think it's 10 minutes. I'm not sure. Anyway, when you reach that duration of your legendary weapons, your weapons just disappear, which makes it very difficult to kill him. So again, Flame Strike, people just move away. There's an egg in the background. As soon as the Phoenix is dead, the egg will spawn. Damage are called to damage the egg. And then, as time passes, we'll get another Phoenix spawn. But it won't be the one hatching from the egg, because the egg is dead. And that's it. That's Kel'thas. I hope this has been informative. I hope it's not been too off the cuff. This has just been, no script whatsoever. So I apologize for that. But it's, this is an hour and almost 9-minute video. It's going to take ages to do all this. So again, if you appreciate this kind of video, if you want to see something like this in the future, please let me know. And I can do this for SSC as well, and then tier 6, and then maybe Kara, and maybe even the heroics as well if people care. Thanks for watching. Again, leave a comment if you would like to see more of this in the future with better scripting, etc. I've been TSW. Subscribe if you want to see more down the road. And I'll catch you later. Bye.